Okay.
Well, good afternoon. Everybody can hear me? Just wanted to be sure. This is Joanna Clark with Houston Public Works. Um, we do have some slides that we want to go through today to talk a little about the project in your neighborhood, why it was originated some years ago, where we are, and answer some of the questions and concerns that you have communicated to us. So I just want to be sure everybody can hear me and everybody can see the slide that I have on the screen. It has the title SWAT Carver Crest Roadside Ditch Rehabilitation Project. All right, let me start then. So we're gonna talk about the, go ahead.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Everybody can see my slides?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna show you a little more about the project limits, origination goal, where we are, and some of the questions hopefully will be answered. So this is a screenshot or where the limits of this project are. We are covering Jarvis Street, including Side Street, Shear, Gabriel, Topaz, and Beverly Hill, all the way from north of Richmond to Clark Crest. So theoretically, this is within the Carver Crest subdivision. I know our Piney Point delineated subdivision is towards the west. So this is all the extensive portion that we will be covering on this project. Where this originated, this was one of the projects that actually was requested by the council district some time ago. We were approached and we were asked to evaluate the neighborhood due to several complaints on flooding and ponding. And part of our preliminary assessment that we did to actually qualify this project indicated 3 reparative loss claims and severe ponding issues on many of the streets. Based on this data, that's when we scheduled this project to be completed this fiscal year 2020 under our SWAT initiative, that if somebody's not familiar with it, it stands for a Stormwater Action Team. So we were very glad to be able to qualify this project considering the severe needs of drainage improvements in the neighborhood. So what are we doing with this project? In general, our goal is to improve drainage in the entire subdivision. And we selected these streets as the ones that were in highest need, higher priority for improvements due to the conditions of the roadside ditches here. So what we're doing overall is replacing all the culverts, clearing all the drainage barriers, all the obstructions are on the ditches, obstructing water flow, and in general, reestablishing those ditches. I will show you a little, again, some images where you can see what this means. So these are some illustrations on the neighborhood. You can see the water standing. This was before we started the project. When the water stands is due to many, many reasons. One of them, and the main one, is actually the positive drainage on the ditches. So we have some offsets on the culverts, the alignment of the ditch. The ditch is also obstructed. Then you start seeing this type of standing water that is absolutely not what we want to see in any neighborhood in Houston. It impacts during any
If you can mute your phones so it'll minimize the feedback. If you're on your laptop and your phone, if you could mute, it'll help us out. Thank you.
So these images are prior to the project again. Some of them are very, very clear, and this is the constant situation that we observed when we evaluated the subdivision. This illustration actually shows you what I'm talking about. If you notice the alignment of the ditch compared to where the driveways are, where the culverts are causing actually the standing water that we saw. These are some other images on the neighborhood, Jarvis Street. You can hardly actually tell where the ditch was used to be. You can see all the debris silting along the ditch and closer to the culverts. And again, vegetation, overgrown, grass coverage that actually is obstructing all the drainage. So again, these are some images prior to the project. I want to also show you this screenshot ponding. So we do have some data that gets collected yearly, measuring ponding on different streets. And you can tell here on Jarvis Street and the side streets that I mentioned, Gabriel, Topaz, Beverly Hill, how the ponding is clearly showing there. It has impacted, again, our this neighborhood on prior rain events. So in general, the neighborhood has been waiting for this project for a long time. What I wanted to show you is exactly what we're doing. We're not redesigning the system. What we're doing is actually restoring the capacity of these roadside ditches to be sure that we have proper drainage. So when we say reestablishing ditches, what we're talking about is, you see this image on the left, we'll be actually going back to the configuration for which those ditches were designed. So we're setting up the slopes, we're setting up the correct floor of the ditch, we'll be replacing the culverts with the minimum size, which is 24 inches, and actually being sure that there is no obstructions and there is, again, clear drainage all along. Again, some images here you can see, these are from different projects that we have done in the past. Before project on your left, you can again see that that culvert is more than 50% obstructed by all the silt and debris. The ditch is not really clearly and again, it's not serving its function. It's not serving really what it was designed and built to do. Now, on your right, you see how a ditch looks like when projects like this get completed. We have a clear floor and alignment of the ditch. The proper slopes were set up, and your culverts are clear and ready again to capture all the excess water that we are going to experience during rain and extreme rain events too. Now, to get to that point, to get to that beautiful image you saw on your right, with the slopes, with the sodding, with the proper alignment, with the proper slopes, we do have to go through a very inconvenient process of construction. That's just how the process is. You can tell in these pictures that I wanted to show you, during construction, our contractors have to excavate a much larger area to be sure that we are going to be able to have enough room to, again, set up our slopes, that we're going to set up the 2 minimum foot that we set up on the floor of the ditches. And especially closer to the driveways where the culverts are being replaced, we need to excavate larger areas to be sure to accommodate the pipe and then leave us room to calculate and be able to do all the sloping that we need to have. Again, some images about culverts on your left, a before project image where you see the culvert, how it's obstructed. Again, it's not serving its function. And this is after the culvert was already replaced. And then you see the nice ditches that have been already fine-tuned, adjusted, reestablished, and sodding was already installed. Again, these are actually on your neighborhood. These are during construction. You can tell how the driveways, how the culverts actually have to go through a very rough construction process to be able to be removed and then later reinstalled. And that picture on your right, I mean, you can tell, I understand the concerns that were common in the neighborhood of seeing this type of excavation. You can tell where our worker is standing. That's a significant depth. But again, this is part of the construction project to be sure to give us the room to install the pipes and to be able to reestablish the ditches. So on this and any other project, these rehabilitation projects are all over the city. We're very proud to share with you that we serve many of these projects on all the council districts to improve, to restore capacity on our roadside ditches. And in general, we do complete first step before each of these projects start is actually a very detailed survey. The reason for the survey is because we need to determine, of course, elevations. And one of the most important things, we need to see where the City of Houston right-of-way line is to be sure that we are doing all our work within the City of Houston right-of-way and not on private property. I want to clarify that this project is fully within City of Houston right-of-way, and there has been absolutely no crossing that line into private property.
Jonah, you have been muted. We can't hear you.
Okay. Did you hear the survey portion?
A little bit.
Okay, so let me recap quickly. So we do actually complete a very detailed survey before we initiate any project. So what this survey gives us is, again, elevations, all kind of data to be sure that we are going to be able to complete an accurate design. But mainly, we also locate our right-of-way line. We want to be sure that our projects are completing within City of Houston right-of-way, and we are not crossing the line into private properties. And I want to clarify that that's exactly what this Carver's Crest drainage project is, just like most of the projects within the city. So there has been absolutely no work on private properties. All the work that you are seeing is within the City of Houston right-of-way. Once we have the survey data, then we proceed with design, and then subsequently we move to construction. Now, on the Carver Crest project, we have 3 pending tasks. Some of them already ongoing, which include site restoration. We're talking about minor cleaning and restoring all the sites, cleaning up debris, any construction material that might be being left off. We also start installing sod on the side slopes of the ditches to be sure that there is a good grass coverage. And we also have to work on relocating some utilities. So in the neighborhood, sometimes we find power poles, gas lines, and we need to remove some of the abandoned lines that have been found on the flow line of the ditch. So we're working on those 3 steps to complete the project. These are some pictures on the Carver Crest project that we took recently, a few days ago, where you can see on your left how this portion of the ditch has been already regraded, but it still needs the sodding. So it looks like a larger area excavated, but we still haven't put on all the grass cover that needs to go in. And of course, we need to do all the site restoration too. So this that you're seeing on your left is not completed. The one on your right already has been sodded, regraded, and we're working on relocating the utilities, this pipe that you see on the way, that is in process of being relocated. So I hope this provides information about the project in general. We compiled some of the concerns that were communicated to us, and I have some questions and answers here that I would like to go briefly, and then we can open it up for any other concerns or questions that you may have. So I know one of the main concerns you all had was about the depth of the ditches. So again, I wanted to clarify that the minimum size of the culverts that need to go on these ditches is 24 inch. So therefore, the minimum depth of the ditches is typically 2.5 feet at the upstream. We need to keep in mind, though, that the ditches get a little deeper on the downstream. However, we never exceed the maximum depth that is 4 feet. If for any reason, capacity-wise, we had to go deeper than 4 feet, we wouldn't be installing roadside ditches. We will be going to a closed system. And I'm talking about sewer pipelines that go underground. But that's not the case in the neighborhood. The capacity that we need is feasible with the roadside ditches that we have, again, that are not as deep as 8 feet. Now, talking about the benefits of the ditches exactly. Number one, the ditches now are regraded, are going to give us that positive drainage that we're looking for. The water is going to drain better. So you remember those first pictures that I showed you with standing water? That won't be the case. Water will flow better because we're going to have the proper slopes along the ditch. Also, the culverts have been replaced with the standard 24-inch size, which matches with the ditch flow line. And also that's also going to eliminate the ditch that is all the blockages on the ditches that we previously had. Now the ditches are deeper to be able to maintain that positive flow line and wider to be sure that we have the standard slopes. We typically go between 2 and 1, which means for every foot that you go vertically, you go 2 horizontal. That's what this means. And we don't exceed the 3-to-1 side slopes, which is the case in most of the ditches on this neighborhood. Now, the deeper and the wider these ditches are, they provide more capacity, and we have more capacity, again, ability to store excessive stormwater. And this is helping us alleviate the severe ponding case that is happening, has been happening in the neighborhood for a long time. There are some properties on this neighborhood we must know that are below the road, the elevation of the road. And especially in those cases, that's when roadside ditches become very, very useful and beneficial. One of the questions again that was communicated to us was about the type of work. Is the city extended the ditch work into private properties? And the answer is no. The work is limited to the city right away, and all the ditches are perfectly located within that right away and not in private properties. Some of the residents receive encroachment letters, so I wanted to clarify the why. The letters typically are sent to properties that have unpermitted driveways and parking pads, and these are typically removed by the contractor, and the ditches need to be reestablished without that type of obstruction. So we always send these letters to property owners in advance, so they have the opportunity to relocate whether they're fences or planters, retaining walls, any landscape that might be obstructing the ditch, anything that is, again, just within the city of Houston right away, not in the private property. Typically at these locations where the obstructions are not removed by the owner and they are interfering.
Joanna, excuse me, Joanna, can you repeat that section regarding the right-of-way and why did residents receive encroachment letters?
So when we are reestablishing the ditches, we need to be sure that there are no obstructions or any type of structures that are going to be limiting the capacity of the ditch. Again, only within the city of Houston right away. So sometimes we do find fences, planters, retaining walls, trees, landscapes on the ditches that will again prevent drainage from being improved. So the letters are sent in advance to the property owners to give them the opportunity to remove these obstructions. There are some that the owners do not complete the removal, and if they are confirmed to be interfering with our work, then we use our contractor to actually remove them. But I wanted to clarify that these removals happen only if that object is within the city of Houston right away, not on the private property. So these were the questions again we wanted to answer. Councilmember Thomas, these are the slides we had to show you and the residents, and I would like to open it for any questions or
Sure,
concerns.
and we have some that are in the meeting chat, and so if I'm going to ask these questions, or let me just, if y'all can come off of mute. So Renetta, if you can come off of mute and ask your question, and then Melissa will be next. Or if I need to unmute you, let me see. Renetta, can you unmute yourself? Oh. Well, I'll ask her question. So these are like statements rather. So why 24-inch culvert? You answered that regarding that being the standard practice for the type of ditch.
Yeah, that one, it has to do with both the capacity of the ditch, but also with maintenance. If we install pipes that are smaller than that, we don't have the capacity, the capability to physically do the maintenance that they require. So yes, 24 inches is the minimum.
And that is required by the infrastructure design manual. Well, that's a standard we have to follow. Is that correct, Joanna?
That's correct, yes.
And to add to that, the sizes smaller than that have known to clog quicker due to silting and up. So there's a reason why we have that in the infrastructure manual is maintenance as well as functionality of that culvert size.
In addition to that, she mentioned the exposed electrical and gas lines.
Those lines were shallower. Typically, we have a standard in the IDM which says that the utilities have to be buried at least 3 to 4 feet cover under the roadside ditches. But some of these were built shallower because the ditch was silted in and they probably did not do a good work locating where the bottom of the ditch was. So these are in the way right now, but it's not a problem because the utility companies, the gas lines, they're going to come to the site and they're going to make it deeper. So they're not going to remain exposed. They're going to be relocated by center point. We have already coordinated this with Centerpoint. They agreed that the lines need to be deeper, and they're going to come and relocate these.
If I might ask a question,
Sure.
Carolyn Boozer, I need. We didn't get this presentation before you all started work, so I'm very curious as to. You said a council member. What council member said we needed this?
Steve Lee.
This project came from the previous council member. Typically, the way the SWAT operates is at the beginning of the fiscal year, which is June end or beginning of July, the council members bring to our attention various regions of the district that has issues. And based on their budget, they prioritize few of the projects to be implemented in that fiscal year. So these projects that are picked comes off of a backlog of all the complaints, all the wish lists the council districts had for a while. So every year when we loop back with the council district, they select few of these based on priority to go into construction. And that's how these projects came into being. Our previous council member Lee, had this on their list, and he prioritized this project to be implemented this last fiscal year.
Well, I'm going to say up front, I don't know why he would do that. Our issue had been there were minor areas in ditches where the water did not flow, but the city would come out and scrape a bit, and then that would solve the problem. In all of the years that we've been here, we've not experienced any severe ponding, flooding that lasted for any extent of time. Of course, tropical storm Ike and Harvey. I'm sorry, Hurricane Ike and Harvey, and then Tropical Storm Allison. None of our homes were flooded, and water rose, of course, but within a reasonable amount of time, it drained. So I'm really struck by the fact that you say a previous council member did that. Maybe some of our, I'm a member of the Civic Club, and I really don't have any recollection of neighbors making those kinds of comments that would warrant this kind of construction in our subdivision.
And if I can add to that, and I think, Tanu, some of the concerns is that because this neighborhood has not flooded, water and home, and that once the maintenance and the development of these drains happens, that they will experience flooding. So it's an elderly community, dominant, and so we want to make sure that they don't experience water in their homes. And so I think that's one of the underlying concerns that I've had. And so if you can respond to that, and then we have additional questions. One, what's the process to put out heavy trash during this construction? There was a question from Melissa. How come some unpermitted second driveways were able to be replaced while others were not?
So to answer your, is that all the questions, council member? Sorry.
No, but just so we can stay on track, if we can address Ms. Carolyn's initial about, their concerns about this process, and then if we can respond to the additional ones.
Okay.
Hey, council member, I just wanted to let you know that I've joined the call. Sorry I'm a little late. As I drive to another meeting, I've got my laptop open. I'm going to mute it though.
Thank you.
I'm here and I'm listening to all of the conversation.
Okay, great. And for point of clarity, that's William Paul Thomas. He's the Director of Council Liaisons for the Council Relations for the Mayor. And so he's helping us with this presentation today. Thanks for joining. So can we go back to Mrs. Carolyn's initial concern?
Sure. To start off with, when the council member initially brings this, it's typically some constituent starting the issue, because most of these projects came into being because somebody in the neighborhood complained. And as an additional screening process, we do look at the flooding and ponding issues. And when we did a search, we did find FEMA reports on a couple properties that flooded there. So to be precise, there were 3 properties that reported repetitive flooding within that neighborhood.
What were they?
Pardon me?
What were the properties that reported flooding in their homes?
Well, we don't give out the addresses of these properties. FEMA report claims are confidential. We just get the number from them. So they give us hotspots or locations where these are. And these 3 reports were within the Carver Crest subdivision.
Yeah, we're not aware of these.
And also there were ponding issues, which was clear from some of the ponding maps that we did see that there is some ponding going on in some of those areas. So that is the reason why council member brought this to our attention and asked if it qualifies for SWAT. And typically the project that are not directly in the way of a riverine flooding outside the floodplain and still has repetitive structural losses, those qualify for SWAT. So our response was, yes, council member, this one does qualify for SWAT because we do see that there were a couple of flooding reports. And if you wanted to proceed with the project, we will be implementing it. And that's how this project came into being. And the second question about what if the subdivision that did not flood starts flooding because of the project? To explain that, it's highly unlikely because the way the subdivision was, if you looked at some of our previous pictures, the ditches were not having a full capacity. There were culverts that were blocked. There were areas where the flow line of the channel or the ditches was not even, so you could see up and down in the areas, which was causing water not to flow. So with this project, we reestablished the ditches, we took away all that extra silt, we opened up all the culverts. So it is not possible for this to make the situation worse. And the reason I say it is, I want to give you an example. Say you had a gallon of water that you wanted to pour. Previously, you had a small cup. And when you start pouring into it, you see it overflow. You replace that with a big bucket. And then you start pouring the same gallon. Now that bucket holds a lot more water before it starts overflowing. So the bigger ditches, the trapezoidal section of the ditches provides more capacity, so the water is retained in the ditches before it comes out and flows onto the property. So that scenario is unlikely that previously what didn't flood is going to flood now, because previously the drainage system was not to its best capacity and now it is. So even if it does not completely avoid flooding, it cannot make the situation worse because you have a better system now. And sorry, council member, what was the follow-up question after that? So
the one about the process of trash.
So any trash, I want to just clarify, the contractor is not done there. The earthwork is done, but they still have site restoration, sodding, utility relocations, and all those things to be done. So the contractor will take off any construction debris will be cleaned up. The contractor will do that. They'll clear up everything in the ditches.
So this is more about the residents and their heavy trash during construction.
Residents are having problems to get rid of their heavy trash.
The question is during construction, where do they put their heavy trash if they're maintaining the drains, which is in front of their homes?
No, Tiffany. It's on heavy trash days. There was typically, about 4 or 5 feet available at the street where we could place heavy trash. We only have about 2 feet now, so there's nowhere to put heavy trash other than on the street.
So you're saying because the ditches are a little wider now, there is no room for heavy trash?
Yes, the property that was there alongside the street is no longer there. We only have about 2, maybe 3 feet at the most. So there's nowhere to put heavy trash. on the property.
I just would like to add that unfortunately or fortunately, those are the minimum standards that we actually keep when we install this type of ditches and regrade them. We keep the 2 to 3 feet between the edge of the pavement before you get to the slope of the edge. And some of the pictures.
Well, that might be the minimum in some neighborhoods, but I would think that neighborhoods are approached based on their characteristics, not by standards. So again, where do we put our heavy trash?
What you said you're putting it closer to the street now, or before you were able to put it closer to the street?
Before, there was about 4 to 5 feet where we would place heavy trash in our trash cans on trash day. Now our trash cans barely fit in that little ground space that's alongside the street. And if we have heavy trash, we have nowhere to put it.
So it's going to intrude into a little bit in the traffic lane. And if I am hearing you, your heavy trash days are once a month?
Yeah.
So during those days, we can work something with solid waste management, seeing if they can pick it up earlier so it does not stay outside, intruding into the road for a longer time.
So what if there's an emergency and the fire truck needs to get through there? I'm just putting you on notice that it's going to be an issue because the streets aren't that wide. There's not enough room to put heavy trash, so it's going to create an issue. The neighborhoods that you're talking about have much wider streets, so they can accommodate, maybe putting it on the street, and most of them probably don't put it on the street. The neighborhoods like ours tend to have more trash, so as opposed to the other ones that don't have as much trash.
Well, the way we see it, if you had 4 to 5 feet and now it's reduced to 2 to 3 feet, you're still talking about a couple feet difference, and we don't believe that would lead to a blockage of a street completely for emergency vehicles.
Leave me your name and number, and I'll invite you out on before heavy trash day so that you can see for yourself.
Yeah, the streets are pretty narrow. They are.
Narrow.
Yeah, they are. It's hard for 2 cars to pass each other. I mean, they're really tight. They are. I've walked that neighborhood several times. It's a narrow. But we'll follow up on that. So if you will allow me, Melissa, to follow up with solid waste, let me have a conversation with them about this issue particularly and which route, so we can see what accommodations we can make. So let's do that. Sherelle, can you make a note, please? So I also want to an additional question about let's go back to the permitted and unpermitted second driveways. So how some permitted second driveways were able to be replaced and others were not. Can you clarify that?
Yeah, so typically when we first do survey on here and see that there are coupled 2 driveways in residence, the first thing we do is we go through our permitting center's ILMS system, which keeps record of every permit that happened in that neighborhood. So we pull up permits on every home if there was one, and we make a list of all the properties that had permits and the ones that did not have permits. So if a second driver was replaced, that means that we got a permit either from our ILMS system, or the homeowner was able to pull up a permit from their records and show it to us that this was in fact a permitted driveway. So only in those situations where either ILMS had any documentation or the homeowner had any documentation, the driveway was replaced. If we could not find any documentation, the driveway was not replaced.
This is Melissa Neely. I'd love to talk about that more, because your permitting system only pulls back to a certain date, and our homes were built in 1950, and being not the original owner of our home, we obviously could not provide a permit for the second driveway, but it's existed way longer than your permitting system has. Additionally, in talking with neighbors on our street, we've learned that there have been special accommodations made to people with second driveways when they did not provide a permit, but worked with someone within your project who was able to get that done.
I don't believe that's the case. If you could give us the property addresses, I can look into it. But typically, we do not make exceptions. What applies to one resident applies to all residents. If we either got a permit directly from the property owner or we got the permit from the ILMS system, that's the only way where we replace a driveway.
Okay, so what about the houses that may have driveways that existed when your permitting system existed?
Well, unfortunately, some of these improvements cannot be grandfathered. It is a homeowner's responsibility to keep a record of their permits or whenever it was constructed, that was constructed as per plans. But the reason we implement this is because anytime you cover up a portion of the road, it impacts the overall drainage system. And if you were talking about a culvert that had been for 30, 40 plus years, it is very highly unlikely that these were permitted and they were not of the right sizes. The driveways were not standards. So that's why there was a permitting in place. So when these are constructed, they're constructed in such a way that it works in tandem with the drainage system. So there are a lot of old neighborhoods where we see complete homeowner has covered the entire property and they claim that it existed like that 40 years ago. Unfortunately, we cannot pave the entire area in that for all these neighbors who have had these driveways for a long time, because we'll end up covering up most of our system, which is counterproductive to our drainage needs because, like we said, the more open system has more capacity for storage. And every bit of this we close up, it's going to cause issues. So we do what we can best do. If we have records, if we have documents, we put it back. If we can't find these records, we cannot make assumptions one way or the other.
Okay, I'll email you to me with the addresses. I also wanted to ask one last thing about the driveways. Some of your plans just put driveways on empty lots where there was no house built or things like that. Can you explain why you couldn't replace a second unpermitted driveway? Because that interfered with drainage, but at the same time you put new driveways on empty lots?
So typically every lot is allowed one driveway. So when we come do a project, no matter what kind of driveway you had, whether it was asphalt or you just had a brick driveway or a concrete driveway, we come back and we replace it with a standard City of Houston driveway. So the empty lots, although they were empty lots, the property owner gave us information on where the development was going to be. So every property got a driveway. So anybody who owned a property in that subdivision got a driveway. So that's the reason and irrespective of whether it was developed or undeveloped, when the property is developed, it will have a driveway. We cannot deny one single driveway for every property. The access is a must. Right. So whether we do it or somebody else does it at a later stage, it's going to be there. So since we provided this benefit to every property owner, we extended to even the property owners that had empty lots and conveyed to us that they need a driveway.
So
okay,
speaking of driveways,
go ahead, Ashley.
So speaking of driveways, there's a lot on Shear, 26 Shear, where the driveway was moved. I asked the city inspector why was it moved. She said it was because of the electrical line that would have been under the driveway. However, it's been there for 60 some odd years. So I didn't quite understand that because where the new driveway is placed, going to create quite an issue trying to get to a driveway on that small lot.
Is this
Again,
your
the
property? Is this
address,
access to property?
it's my family's property, yes. I'm part owner.
And I have to go look into what the issue was. But typically, if we found something right under the driveway, when they come to do maintenance, they have to excavate out a driveway. So we try to avoid that conflict. But I can go back to the inspector and find out what the issue was. I'm not familiar with the situation on that particular property. Can you repeat that address for me, please?
9026 Shear. And it's actually not the only one. I think if you go to each street, it's probably closer to Jarvis. There are a number of either electrical or pipe lines. I know you're saying that CenterPoint will cover those, but because of where they are located in the depth of the ditches, trash is going to catch on those lines. I'm not sure how they're going to plan to cover them, but
No, the light
when
poles are
water,
going. There were certain light poles that were in the flow line of the ditch. We have had a coordination with CenterPoint Energy. We have paid them through this contract to relocate those lines. So there'll be a lot of gas lines and electrical poles that will be moved because they are right now in the flow line of the ditch.
oh, okay. So they're going to relocate them in under the
They're
ground.
going to be relocating them away from the flow line of the ditch. Yes, we have coordinated with them.
Okay.
Sorry, can you repeat that for me, please? 99
90
90 26
Cheer, CHEER.
Okay. Thank you.
And
So
y'all
one
had
of the other
I do have another question.
and we have some other of your neighbors in the queue that have been typed in the chat line.
Okay.
Go ahead, and then I'll go back to them.
Go ahead then.
Are you sure? So Danielle had a question regarding the slide in terms of the culvert replacement photo. I think she was just she noticed that wasn't the neighbor, that wasn't their neighborhood. So I think they were just showing you a before and after of what it will, the process and what it will look like. So Phyllis had sent an email earlier with some photos. I think Miss Carolyn did. So they were just showing you a before and an after and what it's supposed to look like, not necessarily your neighborhood. Basically what you can expect after the project. So there's an additional question from Danielle. What about the homes that have more vehicles in the driveway that allows vehicles and parking on the street blocking the flow?
Sorry.
So my question is, it's mainly on Jarvis. There's a lot of driveways that have more vehicles than the driveway allows, and it's really congesting traffic. There's no room, basically kind of alluding to the trash factor, but now it's vehicles that are actually parking in the street because there's no room anymore to park closer on the grass.
This would be for neighborhoods and enforcement. If this is causing a public nuisance of people parking on the streets, every house is supposed to be able to have a driveway, a garage, and no house is supposed to have that many vehicles if it's a residential property. But if it is causing a public nuisance, we can bring this up to our Department of Neighborhood and our code enforcement to see if they can do a investigation there and see what's going on.
No, that's not. So in that neighborhood, the way before the drainage project, you could literally pull up on the side of the street and park there because it was that much land. So she's saying that now with the project and the minimization of that property, cars are now directly in the street because each street is very tight. So, because I pulled up and parked on the side next to the ditch as a parking spot. So those homes aren't necessarily designed, like they're not, all of them are not contemporary homes. So cars would utilize this side. So like on that before photo where that tractor trailer, like cars would park there because I parked there. So now when that's gone, it's creating a traffic jam in the street.
I would like to say that, I mean, that's part of also when the street that was constructed that probably doesn't meet the current width for standard residential streets. So I know the space on the ditches was used to compensate for that. However, I just want us to consider that if these streets didn't have roadside ditch system, we will be in a curb and gutter situation where, again, we cannot count on simply these areas that are meant for drainage to be in
we can work with the Department of Neighborhoods, but this, the reestablished ditches, after completion, I don't think that's our area either. So it really doesn't accurately show the lack of space, but we can work with Department of Neighborhoods if that's what we need to do.
That's fine. This is one on your neighborhood. We can see how tight it is.
Yeah.
I'm trying to say is that this also, again, we cannot suddenly widen the streets or move the properties. We have to provide proper drainage. And one of the things that, again, is on the toolbox is to evaluate the restrictions of parking on the street. So if it's becoming an issue, parking on both sides of the street, Houston Public Works can start investigating, and I want you to think carefully if you want to go that route about parking restrictions on these streets due to congestion.
Sherelle, can you
it's creating a safety issue. It's just creating a safety issue, so you pretty much have to address it.
And we can follow up with our Department of Neighborhoods and with Public Works around this specific matter. So our intention is that once we go through all the Q&A, we're going to capture all of the questions. We're recording this video. We'll send this back out. So if you have an email, I would encourage you to drop it in our chat box. So we'll send this directly back out, and with some follow-up. One, parking restrictions is something I think the Civic Club, if y'all can offer up a series of recommendations on follow-up, so we can have a unified message around our priorities, and then we'll initiate. So we are capturing your concerns, but if the Civic Club could help us take lead on that, we will work with them to make sure that all of them are assessed, and so that everyone is on the same page about what we're going to do. And rather what your priorities are, particularly around traffic, because I know. So then, Ms. Renetta, again, we were told yards that had covered ditches would have culverts recovered during this project.
Sorry, can you repeat that, please?
This is from Ms. Renetta Moss. We were told yards that had covered ditches would have culverts recovered during this project.
Yards with covered ditches. So essentially, if you had a covered ditch, we reestablished the ditch. We do not cover it up. I'm not sure where they got this information, but typically the whole idea of the project was to uncover anything that was not supposed to be covered. So we reestablished all of the ditches the way they were supposed to be. So if some property had a completely covered yard, you only get your driveway covered. You don't get that completely covered yard because it's a ditch.
That's not what we were told. We were told that it would be recovered.
Who told you that?
The contractor, I remember his first name, Saul. He came to one of our meetings.
I think it had to be a misunderstanding because our contractor is very clear on the scope of work. We communicated to the council district.
Did anybody else hear that? Was I the only one heard that in the meeting? Carolyn, Jordan?
Which part?
That anyone who had covered ditches would have the ditches recovered during this project.
We never do that, ma'am.
I think they meant only for the driveways. I think he meant for the driveways that they were going to cover the ditches.
Well, that was a given, so that was not a question. It was pertaining to, I wish I could find my notes because I know I wrote it down as well. But yeah, the guy, Saul, whatever his last name is, he's the one that mentioned that.
This must be somebody working for the contractor. That definitely did not come from Houston Public Works. but we will follow up with Paul and
No,
try to.
S-A-U-L, Saul. He was the prime contractor on the project.
Saul Salinas.
Saul?
Yeah.
Okay, Saul Salinas.
Saul Salinas. Yeah.
That's what she said. It's Saul Salinas.
So one of the other issues that concern us, and you've kind of talked about it as far as how deep they are. So if someone gets hurt or drowns in those ditches, since it's City of Houston, it's on you, right? It's not on us.
The ditches are.
That's a question for the legal department that we're just simply not prepared to answer, we're not attorneys.
Okay. Well, can you let us know?
We will follow up with the legal department and respond back to the council member.
Okay, thank you.
Tiffany?
I'm here.
Okay, this is Phyllis Taylor. I still have a concern because nothing's actually been solved tonight. The ditches are still deep. We still have no, actually on our street, one person can go down the street at one time. Now, actually, if I have someone come to visit me, we have one driveway, single driveway. If someone comes to visit us, they can't even park on the street or behind the cars in the driveway. And as deep as these ditches are, they'll fall in the ditch walking down. Actually, my mother walks with a cane. I'm afraid for her to walk down the driveway. If she falls, what's going to happen?
Right. So that's what I think Danielle was mentioning as well, when we pointed out that with that project, how cars typically park on the side of the street in order to access, because the way it's designed. And so now with the minimization of that, the removal of that land, it's creating a traffic congestion. So what we're going to do is that we're going to follow up with our Department of Neighborhoods and HPW to follow up, make sure if the Civic Club would like to impose a limit of cars or some type of process. That's what we're going to do. So
to the neighborhood.
That's not fair to us because we've enjoyed parking in the front of our house for 50 years, I know.
I don't think that they would have did the same project on Augusta or San Felipe or.
It's the one on Augusta that's not.
So
I went to
I hear you. It's very convenient to park on your side of your. It is convenient. So so if I can share what's different around from the SWAT program. So any SWAT project is only to make your whatever that process at baseline, just to bring it up to.
It's not helping. It's not helping the drainage. There's green water standing in the ditch right now. So it's made it worse. But it looks worse, and the water.
So it's still in process. They're not complete. It's not done. So if the difference between any other type of like major capital improvement, the SWAT projects that are assigned, just to bring it up to baseline. So unfortunately, the drains had not been addressed for a very long period of time.
They didn't have to take the side on our side of the property. They took all the way up to my mother's flower bed, and they did as far as other people as well on the street. If they weren't going to take it from the street, that's fine.
No.
Well,
we need a parking place on the street because they took so much dirt until they had a mountain where they were storing the dirt. Well, and they just came in. I asked the man in front of me, I said, please, why are you going so deep? I have to go 4 feet deep. There are little children on the street that's getting in the ditch and you can't even see their heads. And that is ridiculous because their parents, they can get hurt easily. And an old person, they weren't doing this for aged people because aged people cannot get in the ditch and take the trash out the ditch. And we used to maintain our ditches in the front of our house, which now we can no longer do. And my yard man, I'm not going to ask him to get down in the ditch and hurt himself. So
no.
To maintain the ditch.
I'm not asking to do that. So are y'all able to see the slides that she was sharing?
I see the ditch. I don't want to see the slide. I see the ditch. I know how it was before, and I know how it is.
So one of the reasons why we wanted to show the presentation is because it gave a visual to why the ditch had to go deep. in order to service.
It didn't have to go deep. It hasn't flooded. I've been here.
Let me explain something.
Through Harvey.
We went through Harvey. We had 51 inches, excuse me. We had 51 inches of rain during Harvey. We did not flood one day, the whole time. Maybe a half a mile down the road when you go down Westheimer and you make a right on Gessner, where those $1 million homes were, they flooded. I'm not trying to save them from flooding next time. I'm not going to be their scapegoat, okay? We're not trying to be their scapegoat because they have $1 million homes. And we're just playing point over here.
I don't.
That's what it seems like.
We're gonna cut the ditch.
No, I'm not following.
Here's the ditches over there.
Following. So this is not so this project isn't about your flooding though. This is about the drain maintenance. So I think a concern is that if once this project happens, you'll start to flood, and that's what she was showing earlier about why with the photos in the presentation.
So dig us a retention pond. They don't do anything with the Amanda Street. They could have left the ditches the way they were and dug a retention pond on Amanda Street, and we would have been just fine. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. It cost near as much.
If I might speak up, we were told that that the project would begin at Clark Crest, and they were going to tie in our drainage with something else on the north side of Clark Crest.
Exactly.
And so it makes us very suspicious that now
this was at this was at the Civic Club meeting with the contractor, or this was before?
At the Civic Club meeting,
and they said they were going to tie it into another drainage system?
Like on the, from the south side of Clark Crest to the north side of Clark Crest.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, our neighbors to our west, Westmont and Tanglewild, and they're getting some new drainage. There's and so we, and again, we never got this level of presentation at our civic club,
right,
so that where we could object or anything like that.
Right.
So it again, it sort of makes us suspicious of what the city is trying to accomplish with drainage, and putting these very large, wide, deep ditches when before most of our neighbors maintained their ditches. We took the trash out so that water would flow. We can't get down into those ditches anymore to do that to be a partner with the city to do that kind of work.
Sure. So you're talking about the $2 million project in Briar Meadow, and I will tell you that they are suspicious. We've had a similar meeting with Briar Meadow, and they're getting that whole drainage deal down Richmond, and they have similar questions around. You're right. I just think people, once we talk about digging up streets and drains, people get concerned. They have experience flooding, and so I don't want you to think that this is any.
They don't have ditches in the front of their yard, though. They don't have ditches.
They don't have big old values in front of their yard.
They don't have ditches in the front of their yard.
Design neighborhood. My point in sharing that is that I don't want you to think that this is some type of particular, thing focused on Piney Point. It's not. So it's not. And so I think, and when I walked through this project, when I first reached out to Public Works, when Phyllis first sent her email, one of the things that I had shared with Gary Norman is the fact that when the presentation was made, in terms of communicating with the Civic Club, this type of presentation was not shared, right? So y'all didn't have an opportunity to see visuals. You didn't have an opportunity to see before and after, so you could set your expectation on what to expect. And so all you see is kind of like these ditches, and they were alarming to me because I even shared that with them, like, hey, these are pretty deep. Is this really necessary? Like, what is happening? And so that's why we put this is why we put this together. So this conversation is not our end. What we wanted to do is share with you the presentation so we can see everything together. We can hear from everyone, capture the questions that come from this, right? So now that we know more, you're asking different questions, we're going to capture that. And then we're going to start following through to make sure that this project meets your expectations and also can make sure that it does what it's supposed to do and that you're pleased with the work of the city. So we are recording this presentation. We're going to send this to you. All of the questions that are in the chat box, we're going to take some of the questions from your emails that y'all sent individually are on the slides that she addressed. But anything else that came up that we're going to follow up, Department of Neighborhoods, HPD, solid waste, we're going to do that and send out one update. And so continue to send your concerns and those things that you want to add. If you don't think about it tonight and it comes up, next week, reach out and we'll include it, because this is going to be an ongoing process until we get it right. I want you to know that we're committed to making sure that we get this right for y'all. So we're going to answer those questions because it's my field and y'all are giving all of the information that you probably should have had.
Well, I'm going to, let me do this final thing. I believe that you've taken 2 feet across the front of my property into my property line. You started your cut for your ditch well into my property. And so, and I'm at 3233 Jarvis Street. So to say that you didn't take any private property, I'm struggling with that one.
Sorry, can you repeat your address?
3233 Jarvis.
She's right there.
I'm pretty sure we stayed within the row, but we will send out an inspector to that location and we'll verify, sir, what you just expressed.
Well, we had someone from Public Works to come out. And, his comment was, wow, they really cut this really wide and deep. So,
You said somebody from Public Works came to your
property? I tried to put in a 311 request, and that was extremely hard to do because the issues that we are concerned about don't fit into the normal 311 request. But a fellow came out and looked, and he thought the water should flow. He thought it was cut really, really wide and really wide was his particular issue. And so I asked him, well, how do we maintain the ditches? And he didn't have a comment for me.
Where's the engineer that designed it?
This was, sorry.
Well, I do know.
We just want to clarify that the purpose of this presentation of this meeting is
Hello, can I come in? May I have something to say?
Yes, we do.
May I say one thing? I lived here for 50 years.
This is Rosa at 9019 Beverly Hill. Can I come in?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm also concerned that they took too much away from my property also. I apologize, I hit the wrong button and exit out.
That's fine. No, we'll let's note the address so we can
9019 Beverly Hill Street.
Okay. And then we have Danielle's. So we have 3 properties that fill this. Okay. Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
25, 28, 27, done.
And so we can send a list of properties, Joanna, so that can have be inspected. Miss Carolyn was like literally on the corner, and so she's a pretty large yard. So if we can, we'll send the the addresses to you so we can initiate an inspection.
Yeah, absolutely. That would really help us if you help us compile a list of questions about specific addresses, because we have to go back to the records and verify anything. I want to restate that our survey is very, very detailed and we don't cross into property lines. But again, we'll be happy to go back to our records, to all the marks that we did along the project, and be sure we share with you that information. So again, anything concerning a specific property, please compile and send it to us. We'll be happy to respond.
Yeah, so we'll compile it.
Excuse me, ma'am. Hello? Hello? Hello?
We can hear you, Joyce.
Okay. Yes. I'm just saying that what I see need to be done is to put some more dirt back on the streets and put some more grass down so that we can have a place that looks decent. It looks awful here, and it is awful because I lived here 50 years and now no one can come to visit you, not even one car. I'm concerned about all the cars, but I'm really concerned that the homeowners can't even park right in front of their house. It looks like they're living in a real country. When you're on the street, if you park on the street, you're parking in the middle of the street almost, no one can get by. And if on the other side you'd get out, you'd fall in the ditch. You are parking on the ditch. And there is no way that it looks like a canal running down the street. It's a bayou or something. It is not, and it's so narrow to one car can't pass the other. If somebody's come, one have to wait till one pass where, and then the other one go by. It's ridiculous. They took too much dirt from the street and too much from the home property owners. I mean, it's just too slanted. Today, I just happened to be on Augusta, and they have these slanted ditches, just like we do, but their ditches are probably 2 feet deep, and the slant is so minor until it looks nice over there on Augusta, and I think that's it's not Berry, it's Sugar Hill. And I mean, if you can do it, if you can do that on Augusta and Sugar Hill, you can do it on Jarvis and Richmond, and I mean Jarvis and Beverly Hill and all these streets over here. That looks nice. It doesn't look like you're living in the middle of a country road or something. We want our property to be just as valuable and just as nice looking as other people's are.
Miss Carolyn, if you'll help us capture some of these addresses, because some of our neighbors are on the phone and they're not on computers, so they're not seeing our chat messages. So can we follow up with you to confirm names and properties? Can that work? So we can get a list together?
I'm happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. Because we want to make sure we have quite a few. I think on the call tonight, we have a total of, we have 15 people, and we only have maybe about 5 from the city. So we have a good 10, and we want to make sure that everyone is included so we can follow up accurately. So if we can work with you about getting emails, phone numbers, and property addresses, then we could dive in and start following up with Public Works around.
Okay. And so what I need to do is what? Provide what to you?
We'll follow up with you offline. We're going to capture all of this tonight, and then once we draft our follow-up document, we want to make sure everyone receives the information so they could chime in.
Okay, that's fine.
Tiffany, I have a question. This is
a point of contact for us. That would actually help a great deal, and we're happy to respond to any questions we haven't covered tonight.
Yes, we'll capture all of that.
Thank you. We'll respond.
Yes, go ahead. Yes. I'm still here.
This is Phyllis. I have one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
Wouldn't it have been more valuable if the engineer who designed this had been on the call with us tonight? Because, I mean, I would think that the engineer would have had a great deal to say about why he or she had met with us and explained exactly what was going on and why they came up with this design.
We are the engineers.
They are, Public Works, they're engineers. I mean, I don't know.
Okay, so you're the engineer with us?
Yes, this was one of our in-house projects from Houston Public Works. So.
Okay, well, I would think that you all should have came out and met with us before you came up with this design because, you know, nothing personal against you, but this was a horrible design.
Yes, and I don't know if y'all got on initially, but we kind of talked about background of this project. So, and this was
I heard everything you said. I mean, I didn't agree with it, but I heard what you said.
Same thing too. And so I think, there was some communication gaps. We know that the Civic Club is very active in this community, and so no fault of anyone here, right? So that the reason we're doing this is so we can all get on the same page and be clear about our expectations. Because Public Works, the SWAT team, they're just initiating what the request was, as the city is to respond to these type of deals. So we are working backwards in order to kind of close the loop on that. But the individuals representing for this process are trained engineers, and this is their work. And project manager.
Well, have they been out here? Have they been out here and looked at it since it's done, and they're perfectly satisfied with it? I don't get that.
I don't think they came out here in the beginning to look at the street before they do it.
Right, and I think
this is Rosa. Can I come in?
They look at the design.
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Rosa.
So hold on one second, Ms. Rosa. So so when the contractor came to the Civic Club, I think maybe January, early February, we did not have a representative, I don't believe, from Public Works with him at the time. And I completely acknowledge that during that meeting, information like this was not shared, right? So y'all were just under the a project, and y'all weren't able to chime in on that. So we get that, and we are attempting to fix that and self-correct. And so we're going to capture the contact information, your address, your phone number. Hopefully you feel comfortable sharing that with us. And we're gonna work to close the gap on this and appease and mitigate some of the frustration with the project. And so they can have all the information necessary to move forward with this. So
I know a lady that has fallen off in the ditch twice and had to get AAA to get her out. And she's not at that old, because it's so narrow when she turns in her driveway that she can barely get, turn in with a car parked on the street, and the cars have to park on the street. These are not big homes with great big driveways and great big garages. So these people need to feel comfortable in the place they live, because these are their homes, and my home too. So
yep. You're absolutely right. No, you're absolutely right. And we need to hear those type of stories, those type of issues, so then we can provide Public Works all the information they need in order to do their job, right? So we are capturing this, we're recording this so we can listen to it again and draft, and we're going to follow up with Ms. Carolyn and Reverend Amos so we can get this information of all the properties that have stated issues and all those concerns, so we can close the loop on this. So this won't be our last.
My question, this is Rosa. I would like to address the last comment that was on my mind. I noticed, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Renetta, maybe you can help me out. The yellow house across from your rental property, he has his driveway where, what do you call it, curves to keep him from falling off in the ditch? What do you call those?
The two-story yellow house?
Yes. He has, how did he get his, or was he permitted already to have his with the, I would call them the shoulders on them, on the driveway?
Yeah. They curve, right.
Well, I just assumed with the ditch that deep that's what they were going to do, curve out the driveways to that extent. So how did he get his? Is it because he was permitted?
What he had. No.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's curved, and he built that himself, and so they just replaced what he already had.
Right. Okay, so it's been a little bit over an hour. We're gonna I know y'all have other additional things to do. I really appreciate y'all jumping on the call. I appreciate the SWAT team, the project manager for Public Works, for listening to our concerns regarding this project. Again, we're going to follow up with Ms. Boozer regarding your information. If you would like for your information to be shared, you have a particular one, you could do two things. One, share with her, or reach out to our office. We'll capture it, and we're going to follow up. And by Monday, you'll have a transcribed document of this meeting, which will include the presentation for your files, the questions and the answers garnered from this discussion. Then we're going to also include some follow-up, traffic, street, solid waste with trash, and those type of issues. So Sherelle's capturing all of this information, and we will follow up with you soon to have this to you by Monday morning.
Okay, we trust you'll take care of this.
I got you.
Okay.
This is not our last time having this conversation. So this is our first time where we really get to kind of dig in. I realize y'all didn't have the opportunity to have this type of feedback and kind of express concerns before this was initiated. And so allow us to self-correct this. And so we're going to do that, and then we'll get the ball rolling. And so, Joanne, at this time, what's the status of the project, and is the project actively moving forward?
Yes, we're still working on relocation of utilities, on the sodding, on the cleaning up of the site. Tanu can give us a little better update, but we're way ahead of schedule on this project.
Yeah, initially this project was supposed to be.
Is possibility to, I mean, as we move forward to address their concerns, if we are ahead of schedule and there's concerns about, certain property lines, all of that, is it necessary, is it an option to pause this project until we get on the same page and investigate these particular properties, or can that happen at the same time?
Well, the ditches were already all regraded and reestablished. Like I'm saying, we're in the process of finalizing the sod installation and the utility relocation.
Okay.
So council member, right now what they're doing is restoration of the site. The construction work itself is done. They're doing restoration of the site, and I think the site restoration as well as verification of these property lines can happen at the same time.
Okay, so let us quickly get you those addresses so we can initiate an inspection of those properties, so we can provide these residents some type of resolve on that particular matter, and then we'll do what we need to do regarding other city departments. So are there any other closing questions before we close and then follow up with you on Monday?
Yeah, I thought I understood that when I mentioned the ditches were not properly draining, that construction was still underway and would rectify that. Is that yes or no? They're still working on sloping, proper sloping or not?
They're working on reestablishing the sodding. I think the grading work is done for most part. We can reconfirm that.
The sodding is not part of the sloping.
No, sodding is done after the grading. But they do put a lot of, they use some water to keep the sod on, and there's some debris that might stop the flow right now. But if you give me a location, we'll let you know what the status is.
All the streets. Just go to all the streets. We had rain, and it's sitting in all the ditches on all the streets. So it's supposed to slope from east to west, and it's not.
Okay, we'll verify that with the contractor.
And that's all the streets. Okay.
Sorry.
Well, let me just throw in, I'm happy to hear Councilmember Thomas say that this is not the end, that we are expressing our very sincere concern about what has been done to our little subdivision. And so we want you to know, we've heard your presentation. I understand that there's a process that might need to take place. And yes. So we will work through that. But we are looking for something that will satisfy our subdivision. And so that'll be my final comment, but we appreciate what has been done today. I wish we had seen this months ago. We would have been upset months ago.
Right. Right. But at least it would have been before it initiated. So yes, we will follow up with you. We'll work through the process. We will do this again. And we're going to take care of Piney Point, and now, we're going to make sure this gets done, and that y'all are happy with this. So continue to shoot emails, call. All of that is still welcome, and we're going to work through this. So if you think of something in the interim, please let us know. In addition to what you have.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Tiffany.
No, of course, anytime. That's what we're supposed to do. So enjoy the rest of your evening, and then Miss Carolyn and Reverend Amos will be in touch.
Okay,
right.
you guys enjoy yours as well.
Yes,
Thank
take
you.
care, everybody.
Thanks, Public Works.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Look forward to responding to whatever information you need us to do so.
Thank you. You guys have a good evening and be safe, please.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Mm-hmm.